Thank you, Lisa. We from Grand Valley are all very excited to be here. Can everyone see my slide okay? All right. So we're here to talk about all things Grand Valley. We do a lot of things here in the Art Gallery department. We're a gallery space, we're a borderless museum, and I think sometimes that can be tricky to wrap your brain around, even if you have heard of us. So this is going to be your behind the scenes look at what we do. I'm going to kick us off with a general introduction. This is kind of our elevator pitch, if you will. Grand Valley State University holds the second largest art collection in the state of Michigan. As a university department that operates across all of Grand Valley's campuses, we activate this collection for learning and curriculum integration. Art is on public display on all of Grand Valley's campuses and integrated into every university building, as you'll see today, providing unparalleled access. We empower our community to engage with visual narratives that align with university values through diverse exhibitions and this borderless museum. We utilize digital initiatives and active learning opportunities to spark conversations, action, and reflection on core themes of social justice, human rights, and empathy that align with the university's philosophy of a liberal arts education. So my name is Amanda. I am our learning manager, user experience and learning manager. I'm going to let each of my colleagues introduce themselves, I think just at the beginning of their section. That's a bit of a change from our rehearsal, but I think for the sake of time, that'll be quickest. And we're going to kick things off by talking about the collection in general. And I'll introduce Nathan and Nicole.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, my name's Nathan. I'm the director here. And we've been collecting art at Grand Valley now for about 20 years. And so our collection space has evolved over time to meet that need. From 700 works to over 22,000 now. We have moved our collection recently into this new storage facility that you're seeing now. It has mixed sculpture, works on paper, paintings, a little bit of everything. And to meet the needs of all the national best practices with temperature, humidity, and storage, we have a variety of different ways that we store and use art. The big thing about this space, though, is that we want to maximize accessibility. So it is built with the idea of open concept in mind, open storage. You can see a lot of the works while it's in storage. We have use in the space by students and faculty. We have designated areas for groups to come in and retrieve materials with our help. And the idea here being that we activate our collection, as Amanda said. And so we have to pull our collection often for things around campus really quickly. And so we've designed it this way to maximize efficiencies. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole now to talk about our print drawing cabinet.
Thanks, Nathan. My name is Nicole Webb. I'm the collections manager here at the GVSU Art Gallery. Towards the end of this video that you're looking at, we're specifically highlighting our print and drawing cabinet. So as Nathan said, there's a big variety of artwork here in storage, and quite a bit of that goes in and out of our public buildings on campus. But we do reserve special space for works on paper, and that's our print and drawing cabinet. There's over 3,000 works on paper that represent both national and international artists. This started in 2001 with a major donation by a friend of the art gallery and Dutch artist Cyril Lichtenberg. We have over 300 of his original silk prints, but he also assisted with another generous donation by the Brooks family, James and Donna Brooks. They donated the Cyril Lichtenberg collection of contemporary Dutch prints. So these are over 500 prints that Cyril collected from friends and colleagues in various places that he was teaching or doing artist residencies or living. It's a pretty big variety of prints. I think in a second at this end of the video, you'll also see a few of our other main collections. We have over 200 French prints that range from anything from sheet music to paper fans of advertisements to illustrations from books and book covers that all represent life and culture from 19th century Paris. And then one of my favorites is our Jose Guadalupe Posada collection. It's another one that's a couple hundred prints He was a turn of the century Mexican artist who worked, here's his work right now. All of his images really represent the spirit of Mexico. And he really was one of the first to do the calaveras, or the skeleton images, and use those in publications and newspapers throughout Mexico.
And as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of variety of different objects that require different storage techniques for proper care. And so this is one of our favorites that we like to showcase because it's very unique. This is a three-dimensional piece, but it's made from paper. And so it's like a print, but a three-dimensional print, if that makes sense. It gets suspended when it's on display, so it floats in the air, and has multiple pieces. And so our team made this microclimate box for this piece, and you can see there the details inside of it, the different compartments we made to store it properly, and to easily show it. So the front of this lifts down so we can show it to our community while it's in storage. And that was one of our key factors that we wanted to make sure our storage facility met, was the idea of open storage, open concept, and accessibility. This piece came from one of our donors, an alum in Chicago. And a large part of our collection is contemporary art with an emphasis on regional, in particular out of Chicago. So we have, as Nicole mentioned, we have prints dating back over 100 years ago. We have objects that are a couple hundred years old to things that were just made, literally last month. So we are actively collecting. We've added over, Nicole, give you the proper number, over 1,000 things this year or so. Is that correct, Nicole?
Just this year, we're definitely sitting over 1,000 already from January.
So we've, like I mentioned before, we've expanded our collection dramatically in 20 years, and in part because how we use it across campus, and that's who you're gonna hear from next and see some of that example. So I think next, yes, is back to Amanda.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, so I think one of the most unique things, and one of the things that I was most interested in stepping into this job that I've only been in about a year, is how integrated the art collection is into curriculum at Grand Valley. So right now you're looking at the interior of Lake Huron Hall. It's actually where I'm sitting right now. And this is a building where and I can say this about all of our buildings on campus, where we've really worked intentionally to place artwork in the building that supports the programs, the academic programs in this space, or the function of the space in some cases, like the library or similar spaces. So Lake Huron Hall is home to the departments of English and Classics, and this building was just renovated last year in 2020. And the process of selecting artworks for this space was very collaborative with the faculty from those programs. They provided insights into how artwork is used in their classrooms, how they use artwork to support their learning outcomes. And I'll share one example with you here. If I can find my cursor. So these three pieces are on display just around the corner here. And they offer students an opportunity to explore the connections between ancient and modern ideas. So these three pieces are used in a course taught by Professor Melissa Morrison. She teaches in the Classics department. On the left, we've got the modern reproduction of the ancient Greek vessel, the amphora style vessel with the red figure motif. And then on the right are two examples of contemporary vessels that draw their form and design from this Greek archetype. In Melissa Morrison's class, which is an ancient art course, she uses these three in an assignment where she talks about and asks students to examine modern objects that participate in the visual conversation between ancient and modern artists, designers, architects, and consumers. So in this course, she explains that the artists and craftsmen of ancient Greece and Rome left behind more than a collection of fascinating objects. They also left behind a rich and imposing set of images and motifs, specific shapes and styles, really this entire visual language that other groups in the future took up and used as they saw fit. Some would use elements from these classical objects as familiar reference points to establish a connection between themselves and the ancient world, and then others would reject it. So she shares these objects, they come out of the classroom, this group of students, they look at the objects in person, and then Professor Morrison poses this question. She asked, what are some ways in which contemporary buildings, public art, and other objects have become part of this conversation with ancient Greek and Roman art? And then the students respond in their own way. We approach building projects, as we call them, in this way, a very collaborative way, really across the spectrum. And our most recent project is actually still in progress. The building is just getting the finishing touches, and that's the Daniel and Pamela DeVos Center for Interprofessional Health downtown in Grand Rapids. And so at this point, I'll pass it off to Allison to tell you about this project.
Hello, my name is Allison and I'm the project manager. I manage the process of getting the artwork into all of these building projects. So I work on new builds, renovated spaces, department shuffles, and throughout each of these projects, we work closely, like Amanda was talking about, with the faculty and staff that use these spaces in order to ensure that the artwork going in their spaces is going to be utilized in their curriculum, which is part of the university's strategic plan. It's an extension of our liberal education to be able to have students learn outside of the classroom and use these visuals as an extension of what's learned in the classroom, and then literally go out into the hallways and look at the art and use them in their own research and in their own ways. So yes, this is the Daniel and Pamela DeVos Center for Interprofessional Health, which I'm going to refer to as DCIH after this. All of our buildings have acronyms, which makes it a lot faster to be able to talk about. This building is our third building on our GVSU Health Campus on Michigan Avenue, just east of Grand Rapids Medical Mile. It's a 5-story building and includes an expansion to the simulation center that is also in the Cook DeVos Center right next door to us that this building is connected to. And in the simulation area, you can see right there an example that features state-of-the-science electronic 3D modeling and imaging of the entire body and organs, so students have the opportunity to do operations all simulated in these new labs. Also, with the expansion of this space, it's now the new home for the Kirchhoff College of Nursing. There's also an industrial kitchen on the 5th floor for the dietetics program. And there's an expanded learning commons for student research. So we had various meetings with our art advisory committee. Building projects of this size have larger advisory committees. This one had 4 deans, VP of facilities planning, and of course, Nathan, our director, and myself running these meetings to basically gain knowledge of what these individuals hope to have the artwork be or represent within their space. And so through these various meetings, we've been able to establish what their core ideas were, and I'll show you those in just a second. But the result of these meetings and our team's hard work is for over 400 works of art are now on display in this building. It was open to the public on Monday of this week. We'll be finishing up the installation of the 3D works of art this week. We have approximately 200 works of the 400 came from our existing collection. So these are pieces that were either reserved knowing that this building was on the queue coming up, or they are works that we have collected over the years and now understanding the programs that are happening in this building, we'll be able to utilize these works of art that were in storage in a meaningful way. So it's always really satisfying being able to find a perfect fit for a work of art that's been in storage, that you know that the people who are going to view it are going to actually appreciate it because they relate to it. And then we did do additional purchase for this building. We have an art budget that's part of the bigger building budget that's provided to us, and manage that budget with facilities planning. And the works of art then that were purchased were basically anything that we felt our existing collection couldn't fulfill through those conversations with the advisory committee. So after the advisory committees that we had, and then I also had one-on-one meetings with some of the advisory members, I put together a word cloud based off of common concepts or themes that the committee members talked about. And so then putting together this word cloud, it was then shared back with the committee to affirm that this is in fact the primary concepts that they are looking to have the artwork achieve within their building, where it comes more to an emotional connection or untangible types of things. This is what this word cloud represents. And so this word cloud was the touchstone of the selection of works of art as we move forward. And it's not only this word cloud, but then, like we had already talked about, understanding the specific programs that are happening on each level of this building, which there are 5 levels to this building. Each level has specific programs. And so the artwork reflects the programs in each of these floors in this building. We can go ahead to the next one. And this is how, you know, after we get all the works pulled together, which is a team effort. I work really closely with Nicole and Nathan on this, utilizing our database and creating sets. Then the sets are organized by floor, and then I use the database to get the images. Katie photographs all the pieces of work to get into the database. And then I start laying them out digitally on our floor plan. So this is an example of the 4th level of this building. And then this plan I print out, and then during installation, we use it to make sure that the placement of everything is what's reflected on this plan. It's also what we use to organize all the works of art once they're completed from being prepared. Nicole organizes them in speed packs. So we can efficiently get everything over to our storage room. So these plans really lead to helping organize the whole process. And it's just fun to be able to see all the works of art in one spot like this as well. And then to walk around the building and it's like, yep, that does look good there. We did a good job. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide. And so then when, you know, I talked about that word cloud, and one of the words that popped out with everybody is to make sure that we have a reflection of our community. And so these 2 pieces were purchased specific for this building by local artist Marcelo Pope, who goes by the name Rosa Lee in honor of his grandmother. He's originally from Texas, but he moved to Grand Rapids to attend, get his master's degrees from KCAD. And the piece on the left, Barbershop Talk, and the one on the right, to us then, you know, represents the community that we serve, and gives students the opportunity to look at these images and talk about the communities that they come from. And the artist himself creates these paintings to be able to promote that type of dialogue. And I think that's all I need to say about that. So thank you.
Thanks, Allison. We're going to pass it over to Katie Prashant to talk a little bit more about the artwork in DCIH and some of her preparation process for the 3-dimensional objects in that space.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I am Katie Prashant. I am the Collections and Exhibitions Technician for the Art Gallery. And this piece, and you can see it's actually behind me as well. I was very excited to take this spot. This is a piece that was done by one of our students who graduated in 2018 with a degree in photography. So her name is McKenna Jefferson, and the series is called Taken for Granted. And one of the amazing things about my job is that I get to help students when they're installing their final thesis exhibits. So all of the photography majors and all of the BFA students all have to go and do an exhibit with us, or they have to do an exhibit somewhere on campus to get their degrees. And a lot of time that means that they're doing installations with us. So it's really amazing to watch the sense of pride and accomplishment that they get after installing an exhibit. And especially for many of the photography majors, this might be their only opportunity to exhibit their work in a gallery environment because they may be going on to more commercial pursuits afterwards. So even if we're the only one who ever gets to display their work, they get to leave knowing that their work was on display. And a lot of times, like Ms. Jefferson here, it's now part of a permanent collection. So while I was talking with Ms. Jefferson, she told me about how during each portrait, she had created kind of like a symbol of power, which you can see on the two portraits on the left, or excuse me, on the right, where they were kind of a amalgamation of different iconography from the model's ancestry. And to quote her directly, she said that capturing beautiful yet emotional portraits of people of color is just the surface. Photographer Carrie Mae Weems inspired me to photograph beyond the surface, connecting African culture through the use of colors, symbols, and prints to reflect African Americans taking back their African heritage and identity. So I was really excited to see these pieces go up into the building because I've been waiting for them to go up ever since we purchased them, because again, they've always been my favorites and they're one of my first ones that I like to talk about. Now, that said, not all of our work involves photographs, which is why my position involves a lot of fire. And I don't have a problem with that. So in this building, like Allison said, there were 400 pieces total, and about 50 of those ended up being 3D pieces. Now, not all of the 3D pieces needed some sort of mounting apparatus, but they did all need to be examined and reviewed to make sure that they were safe for permanent display. So usually that involved Nicole and I putting them up on risers and kind of poking them and prodding them to see how they moved. Sometimes we'd hip check the table just to see how it wobbled and, you know, carefully kind of watch it. And a lot of things can go into how we make those mounts, depending on the material of the object, how heavy it is, how that weight is displaced. And it really just depends after we look at it, what we plan on doing for it. And so each object ends up being very individualized. You can see like on the right, there's the piece that's called a radish. That's actually made kind of out of a basket woven materials. It's not super large, but because it's got those little tendrils that kind of weave down the bottom, it wasn't something that could just be placed upright. It actually had to be kind of floating. So underneath it, there's an acrylic rod that the U bracket attaches to. So there's a little piece of brass that goes across the top that it just kind of wedges into, and then it kind of rests there. So it gives it a floating appearance. The second piece there is called Jellyfish Aquarium. And that's one of those that got surprisingly complex very quickly because the piece is solid glass. So it weighs about 20 to 30 pounds. And it also lights up from the bottom. Now the piece itself doesn't light up. It's got a little base that has a light on it. And then that light shoots up from underneath to kind of give it an ethereal glow effect, which is very beautiful. But also when you're trying to figure out a permanent mount placement, kind of an extra added fun thing to deal with. So with that, because of its weight, I ended up having to make a very heavy brass mount for it, which you can see in the picture there on the right. And it has kind of a J bracket tail that goes off the back just to give it that extra support. But it was one of those things I had to do to push that screw back because again, there's a light box underneath it. And I didn't want to drill in and accidentally hit that light while I was securing it to the riser. And this piece is the Capri Blue Seafoam. It's a piece by Dale Chihuly. Now, this is actually two separate bowls that when placed together correctly kind of balance each other. And it was one thing that we realized when the smaller bowl was placed inside the larger bowl, they actually were fairly sturdy as far as the little bowl didn't slip into the large one. So a little bit of museum wax seemed to hold that one in place fairly well. But the piece in and of itself was still fairly wobbly. So again, that was one of those where Nicole and I spent a lot of time discussing the best way to go about it. Obviously, we don't want to have the mount be very invasive to the piece, but we need to make sure it's very secure. So as a metalsmith, my default is usually to go back to brass. So that was a point where I needed something that would be flexible enough, but sturdy enough to where I could hold it. So it was a lot of annealing and kind of flexing that metal to make that last mount. And you can see here, this is me annealing some metal. So if you don't know what that means, quick metalsmithing lesson. Annealing is just when you heat the metal and then cool it back down. It basically activates the molecules and makes it more flexible. So a lot of times, I think probably for the Chihuly piece, I must have annealed that piece probably at least, I'd say 20 times to get it so I could get those complex curves.
Thank you, Katie, and to Nathan and Nicole and Allison as well. We're getting towards the end of our time with you. It looks like we've got plenty of time for questions. I did see that there were a few in the chat already that Nathan is answering. Thank you, Nathan. I think it might be worth saying some of those out loud, but I know, Lisa, you've kind of got a process for that. What you're looking at now is our online database. We always like to plug this towards the end, gvsu.edu/artgallery, because our entire collection is online, along with a little bit of information about the artwork and the artists. We've organized the collection into topics. There's mini collections like the Brooks collection or the French Prince collection that Nicole mentioned. So there's tons to explore there. And of course, we encourage you all to do that. And if you're able to visit campus and see some of this work yourself. All right.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda and everyone. This has been lovely to see. And for those of you that were at the joint conference with the Association of Midwest Museums, we got to see a little bit of how this works in action, but we got to see so many more spaces and so many more things today. So this is just lovely and wonderful. What I think I'd like to do is, yes, Nathan did kind of preempt some of the questions in the chat, but I'm going to ask them out loud, and then you can just answer them again or expand on that answer, and then we'll move to the new ones that have come in. So the first question that was posted, was the storage facility existing, or was it designed and built based on your needs? So Nathan, why don't you just take that?
Sure, yeah. That was a pre-existing building. It was actually owned by Ferris Nutton Coffee. It was their roasting facility and storage facility there in Grand Rapids. And they purchased a new building outside of Grand Rapids, and so Grand Valley purchased this building and then renovated it. Most of the space is used for the School of Engineering. There's labs and classrooms and offices. But then there was this part of the building, about 7,000 square feet, that was already somewhat separate from the rest of the building and could be controlled more easily via our particular climate needs. So that became our space. Before that, we were in multiple spaces in campus as well as offsite storage. And so this was our ability to bring everything to one consolidated storage facility. We added HVAC and security. Only our team has access to this space. And that's how it kind of came to be. It's kind of an evolution over 20 years of building the collection and moving from one place to the other until you have a very strong argument that the administration has to say, yes, this is a strong need. And so it worked out timing wise with this building perfectly.
Great, thanks. The next question is, can you share any comments on vandalism and prevention thereof?
Sure, Nicole, you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, definitely. So like we've mentioned, about half of our collection is out in public buildings. It's also probably worth noting that Grand Valley also has multiple locations. So I'm in our storage building that's in Grand Rapids, and we have, 5 buildings along with the one that I'm in on our downtown campus. Amanda, who is in Lake Huron Hall, is on our Allendale campus, which is well over 30 buildings, including dorms. Allison mentioned the 3 buildings on our health campus. We also have campuses in, or at least buildings, if not campuses, in Muskegon, Holland, Detroit, Battle Creek, and what's the last one? Traverse City. Yeah. So needless to say, we do a lot of transportation of artwork, and we have a lot of artwork that I only get to see once a year because of its location. So like you can see behind Amanda, it's a good example of that artwork on the wall. We use T-screws or T-security screws on the bottom bar of each frame. That has a special wrench that we use. So that's what secures the actual frame and artwork to the wall, and all 2D artwork is secured that way. All 3D artwork, generally speaking, there's always outliers in anything, right? Are behind vitrines on pedestals, and those vitrines have special, what are they? Are they really called pig nose, or is that just gonna make me sound crazy? Okay, pig nose screws that we use to secure the vitrines to the pedestals. I think security is obviously one of the #1 things on our minds at all times. So we definitely do our best to walk through buildings as often as we can to keep track of things. We do an annual inventory that we're doing right now of all of our buildings to check on safety, security, cleanliness, all those good things.
Have you had any incidences of, damage or?
I'm going to start with, honestly, we have really good luck. Our students and our staff are very appreciative of our work and our collection and what it means to not only them, but our greater community here as well. In saying that, the artwork is in dorms, so students live with artwork on a daily basis. Do we find the occasional googly eye and happy face sticker? Yes. But generally speaking, there's a remarkable amount of respect for the artwork that people find around campus.
Excellent. That makes me happy.
Right?
Yeah. Next question. What is the collections management software that you use?
That's called Collective Access. That's a open source collection management system, so it's free to use. It's web-based, so you just need a web server to host it on. You can host it locally too if you want to do it that way. It has a full back-end administration and a full front end for the public. Different ways to configure that. There's probably close to 20 institutions now in Michigan using this system. And so if you're interested, reach out to one of us or us here at Grand Valley about that, because we do have regional meetups for users of that system.
I did put that in the chat, the website in the chat as well. And I'll send that in the follow-up email. I can send it out.
Great.
I'm curious for if you have favorite items in the collection.
Of course we do. Who wants to go first?
I can share one that I actually cut out of this presentation for the sake of time. Let me pull it up and then I will share my screen. Just a moment.
I love going to the student shows and being able to have a budget that I'm managing for one of the building projects and know that we can actually afford to purchase something. So that's anything student related is such an exciting thing. I remember how I felt as a student having your work purchased, and it's just a great leg out the door.
Yeah, a student work is very cool to see. So this is the piece, hopefully everyone can see this, that I cut out. This is also here in Lake Huron Hall, and it's also used in a course that Professor Melissa Morrison teaches. The title, as you can see, is Modern Myth, Mr. Work and Mrs. House. This is also a student favorite. Professor Morrison has shared that with us. On a technical level, there is a conversation between the way that the male ceramic torso and the rest of his body is posed that kind of points back to ancient sculpture. And then of course, there's this added element of contemporary work life and contemporary domestic life and gender roles. So I particularly love this one because there's so much going on, and there really very much is that conversation between the ancient and the modern.
You probably can't see detail too well, but this painting next or behind me is actually one of my favorites. It looks really tiny next to my head, but it's actually about probably over 8 feet by 5 feet. It's massive. One thing about our collection is we have everything from paintings and murals and sculptures this size to teeny tiny little artwork, which obviously makes putting them on display easier or harder depending on what you're trying to do. This piece is a tribute to the Oklahoma City. It's by George V. Host, and it talks about the Oklahoma City bombing. I think one of the great, oh, thank you, Amanda. I think one of the great things about our collection is we have such a huge variety of stories to tell and a huge variety of artists who tell them. This particular piece has been one that's a little bit difficult for us to place in a building. Firstly, because of its size. Secondly, because of the story that it tells and kind of the warning that needs to come with it because of the story and some of the imagery on the piece. But I love being able to use art to tell a historic story. I have had so many students walk in here and ask about this piece, and that day of the Oklahoma City bombing seems like ancient history to them. It's not something that they were a part of or alive during. So to be able to use artwork to tell them about something that I lived through and to tell them about part of history is what, you know, by far top part of my job.
My favorites kind of change day to day depending on what's in front of me, because with 22,000 pieces, a lot of times, like, I'll look at it and be like, oh, this is great. And then something new and shiny comes out and I'm like, oh, this is also great. And I just get really excited and overwhelmed. Although I will say probably one of the series that I go back to a lot is Matthew Rettinger's. It's called Breath of Sands, I believe. And he was a student that actually graduated around the same time I did, because I'm GVSU alum. And it was very narrative driven and very kind of mythology based, which me, a lover of all mythology of any way, shape, or form, really, really appreciated them in their, this is, one of them. And I think that they did he had a series of, I think it was 6 of them, but the photos don't really do it justice because there's actually gold leaf and with a charcoal. So there were these really nice pops of gold in with among the charcoal drawings, which were very beautiful.
Nathan, how about you?
Like Katie, mine changes often. Today I'm going to go with a piece by Kelly Church. Amanda, if you can bring that up. We recently organized an exhibit of contemporary Anishinaabeg community members. And this piece we were able to purchase from that exhibit for our collection. As you can see there, it's a mask called Breathe in the Beauty of the Day and the Beauty of the Night. It's very intricately made. It's talking about, you can read there in the text, was made in July when the strawberries were growing, the gift of seeing the comet, reminding us of the beauty that surrounds us in nature, in the skies, even in the darkness that was 2020. So again, this contemporary, these beautiful works are still being made around us in our communities, and oftentimes we don't know them. The Native American community is very underrepresented in the contemporary art world. In fact, our show was the first contemporary Anishinaabeg show in the state of Michigan that we did with the Muskegon Museum of Art. So we're just really proud that we're able to help them tell this story, give our space a platform to this community, and then we're able to take these kind of things into our collection to continue that storytelling going forward.
That is very cool. So, all right, I have another question, which is, some of you have worked at some of the other museums in the States and you know, some of the places where the rest of the people on the call work. Some of you have visited there. What are some takeaways that you have found at GVSU and the work that you're doing that you think maybe would serve other people well as well?
One of the greatest parts of my job when we're pulling together works of art and researching possible new purchases for the buildings are the connections that I'm able to make with the artists and keeping them connected not only after the purchase is done. And these these meaningful and reciprocal relationships are what help build our community of the art gallery. And we've been told, you know, through the way that we interact with the artists, that they don't feel like they're just letting their work go and then never have the opportunity to see it again or interact with it again, or, you know, they don't feel closed off from a conversation anymore. And so I feel like our approach in staying deeply connected with the students or the artists within our collection is a way that museums can continue to build community, and not just through programming, which is important too, is obviously, but it's just that kind of a no-brainer that I think we're unique in the way that we approach this compared to a traditional approach in museums.
I think part of our success is in our risk taking. We push forward a lot of times where other institutions may just hold back a little bit. And it gives, what I think learned over the years is that there's much to gain from taking some risk, putting your collection out there, putting these stories out there, letting your community engage with them in their own way. Often this comes in the form of wanting to make sure that we have all of our information just perfect before putting it out in the public, right? And at some level, that hurdle is never crossed. There's still institutions across our state holding on to really important stories our communities need because they're wanting to tell it just perfectly, and that never happens. So I've learned to get it out there. It's okay if it's not perfect. It's more important that these stories get out and don't stay hidden.
I think for me, I kind of feel like I grew up in Michigan museums. I learned everything that I know from internships and volunteering experiences at a few different museums around Holland. In Michigan in general, I actually worked for Nathan before as a student at the Holland Museum in the collections department. I was a student worker when I was a GVSU student, and worked under Nathan again, actually. So I think one thing that's always stayed important for me is just that, you know, so many Michigan institutions are also teaching institutions. And obviously here at Grand Valley, being part of a university, that's a huge part of what we do. So I was really excited to see Kristen, I think, hopefully I'm saying that right, Kristen, mentioned that she was a student and remembers the print and drawing cabinet. We just had a new batch of students start last week for this summer that will be helping us with a variety of projects. So I think that's one thing that's stuck with me is the opportunities we have as museums to create new museum people for the future, teach them all of our knowledge, and, you know, really instill that passion for Michigan museums in them is something I love.
Yeah, I think to bounce off of what Nicole was just saying, a lot of students before this, they may not have had an opportunity to see a collection, especially of this scope. And whereas they would normally have to make the choice to go into a museum to see stuff, now they don't have a choice. So we get to be one of their first experiences in a museum kind of arena, which is really amazing to see their interactions. And I don't know if I've ever had a student when I was engaging with them and they ask me where I work or what I do, and I tell them that I'm with the art gallery, they immediately have a story about a piece that they see or a place that they go that has a piece of artwork where that helps them calm down or it helps them focus for studying. So it's really amazing to see how they've created their own community around it.
So as you're talking about, and I'm thinking about, you know, traditional museums and then the way that you are approaching bringing, you know, what you said, Katie, that the students, they don't have to go to see it. It's always there. And it made me wonder, do you do anything outside of campus? Like, do you do anything in other locations in Grand Rapids, which makes it even more easy and accessible?
I feel like that's a question that my position would typically answer, but having only worked during the pandemic times, I don't have a good answer for that. So maybe Nathan can take that one.
Yeah, so we do a lot of community collaborations with other nonprofits and other museums. We do shared joint programming and events and exhibits. We, of course, participate in things like Art Prize that are in Grand Rapids every year. And we also then share our experiences across the state to whoever is interested. We have people like, I see Joel's on the call. Joel's up north talking to a museum earlier this year. And so, yeah, whatever community collaborations we can, we want to come alongside and support. We want to give voice, we want to give a platform, and we want to really activate the visual literacy that our collection offers.
I feel like that's a tricky thing, though. I think that's maybe why I asked the question, is because I feel like the culture of the GVSU Art Gallery is collaborative and is very much about being out there. But I don't think that's actually really easy to do. And so, what are some thoughts that you have about the people on the program that maybe haven't done it before, but maybe might be interested and are trying to become more develop those relationships and those collaborations?
Yeah, our approach has been just very much, part of this is being part of a higher ed institution, and part of it's just our nature is we're not concerned with necessarily the bottom line financially of these collaborations. It's more important that we have a community collaboration or a collaborative partnership with another institution or another group of people. And so often we offer services at no charge. So sometimes that comes in the form of an exhibit that's very low cost or no charge. We do community-based services. For those of you familiar with an artist catalog raisonné, that's a full life works of a particular artist. Grand Valley is now taking on hosting and managing 2 of those, thousands and thousands of digital assets that we are managing on behalf of our community. So there's just different opportunities that are unique for, I think, every different institution, but find those particular ways that you come alongside and offer a service at a low cost or no cost, and find those ways to partner is one approach and one strategy that's worked for us.
I can think of one example from the past year. Nathan already mentioned the Art of the People Contemporary Anishinaabe exhibition. So one, and this is a department on campus that we collaborated with, but they have quite an extensive network that expands across the West Michigan community, and that is the Office of Multicultural Affairs. We worked with an individual there who is the liaison and the student advisor for the Native American Student Association, and she's on the advisory board, the Native American Advisory Board. I'm sure that they have an official name. I'm not getting it right. Anyways, I think the key element in that collaboration is that each of us individually kind of had something that needed lifting up. And so our efforts together, there was this massive mutual benefit in doing that. So they helped us produce an artist panel discussion. And it was incredibly successful for a Zoom event. We had over 100 people log on. And it honestly was just because of our mutual efforts in promoting the event. But like I said, we had the artwork and the artist and these stories to tell, and they had this community that wanted to hear those stories and wanted to feel seen in a context where they aren't always. So I think mutual benefit, sort of an equal participation and equal reward when it comes to collaborations is really key.
And I was just gonna quickly say too that, so, when we're installing artworks in buildings, there's lots of types of trades and people and faculty and staff and everybody that's around the artwork, and everybody has an opinion about it. And oftentimes it's, without even reading the label. And so there's a gentle reminder, well, why don't you read the label to learn more about it? I think the biggest thing about having works of art on display is to let people come to it as they are. For us to stay curious and meeting new people and hearing their reactions or stories that they want to share is a simple way to collaborate, and to just kind of give people the opportunity to see things that they haven't seen before, and not be offended if they don't like it. Because you know, we've said this before, you can walk around the corner and find something else that you probably will like then. So it's not our job for everybody to like everything. It's our job to help expose lots of different types of artists and works of art, and to have them understand how directly or indirectly it relates to the functions of the buildings and the feeling that's trying to be, you know, presented throughout the whole building.
Okay, I have one last question for you. What is next? What is one thing that each of you are looking forward to?
I'll go first just because I want to beat Katie to it, just in case we have the same one. We've told you all about our online database, and collective access allows us to share all of our artwork with the public, all 20,000 plus things. But those also started to be collected in 1998, and photography was not the same in 1998 as it is now. So we are slowly working towards rephotographing everything. We just had a meeting yesterday that we have a couple thousand, just over 1,000?
We have just over 1,200 pieces.
Since we were able to come back from quarantine, so just over a couple months. So I'm super excited to get our database looking a little more jazzy, and having our images match the high quality of our collection and the art that we showcase in our buildings.
I'll chime in and just say I'm also looking forward to that. My role, part of the user experience, the learning stuff, is just pushing out and elevating all of the artwork, and it's so much easier to do when we have beautiful images to do it.
I'm looking forward to getting all of the punch list items checked off the list for this building DCIH, so I can not live here anymore. And I'm looking forward to this summer we have renovation on Allendale campus of Manitou Hall. And so I'm looking forward to working with the information technology team for that space, making it a little more interesting than it was prior to the renovation.
All right, I'll choose the boring one. Strategic planning. So we are in talks with our president at the university about the university strategic plan. And I'm really excited about how we are intentionally weaving in the art collection into this university-wide plan, finding ways to come along, supporting the university values in new ways. And I'm excited to see where that might take us in the next few years.
All right, so while I am excited about photography, Nicole, that was not the one I was going to mention. I'm most excited. I'm currently working on a Pride exhibit that will be going up in the first part of June in celebration of Pride Month. And it's one of the things I really like about my position here, is because it's one of those, if someone comes up with an idea for something, a lot of times it's just like Nathan was saying, we take risks and they're like, okay, go for it, have fun. So I brought this idea to Nathan right at the beginning of the year, and he said, sure, of course, let's do it. Let's do the whole campus. And I was like, whoa, let's start with one.
That's wonderful. Well, it has just been lovely and wonderful to spend this time with you all at GVSU. And it's just fun to see all your things and hear about everything that you're doing. And someday we'll get to see you again in real life, and that will be wonderful and fabulous too.